Thank you so much for the questions. I'm happy to be here. It's such a beautiful venue. Erika is always surprising us and taking care of us. So before I start, I have a few questions for you, and I want you to be honest. In 2025, who has experienced apps or wallets or anything that was down? Who has experienced? Exactly. So keep the hand up to the ones that you know the blockchain also was down. The blockchain was halted. Exactly, right? So why actually when Solana goes down, it's not about the Solana itself, it's not halted. Ethereum never halted, but the access to it was. Why do we accept that blockchains are decentralized, but the access to them is not? And that's exactly the gap that I want to speak to you about it today. It's not by accident, it's structural. So if you think about 2025, there was a lot of moments that we couldn't get the access. There were major chains, Polygon, Solana, that blocks were producing every second, but transaction could not be made. And, you know, we called it chain outages, and when wallets froze, indexers desynced, but at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be like that. And what this layer is about is the silent layer of RPC. Basically, RPC failures doesn't look like it's down, and you know, when rate limit kicks in, you cannot actually communicate. When you open the wallet, you don't see the balance. When you make a transaction, you receive an error. At the end of the day, we call it RPC failure, but everyone thinks, oh, the blockchain is down. So this already happened before, in the early days of the internet. This is not new. The early internet in the 70s were unreliable. If one computer in this stack was down, it affected the whole network. And this is when the TCP/IP emerged. TCP/IP were actually giving a solution to this problem, that it's the network when they are down, the application don't need to be down as well. So we call it in Lava the reliability problem, which is a routing problem and not an application one. So in Web3, we live in a decentralized consensus. But every app is still writing their tech stack of what happens is when RPC is down, is what happens when there is a high demand, high spike, right? So it doesn't matter when you're accessing the app in the world. If you have wallet users in Japan, if suddenly you have airdrop happening. This is exactly like the moment just before TCP/IP. And teams are not naive. They need to build that. They are implementing today, running 3-5 RPC providers at the same time and coordinating the logic. When one RPC down, automatically they have retry mechanism. And they actually spending more time on creating this retry load balancing logic instead of building their own core logic, their own core business. Why in 2026, applications, exchanges, wallets, AI agents need to implement their own infra? Because the logic doesn't scale. And that's what I call the missing layer. Routing Reliability Layer, RRL. Lava is not only an RPC provider. Lava coordinates providers. It aggregates providers from anywhere in the world that can permissionlessly join. Doesn't matter if you run node in Hawaii, in London, in Japan, you can join and be one of the providers. So at the end of the day, applications are speaking to one endpoint. But this endpoint is not a single point of failure. this endpoint always has redundancy. This endpoint always has a backup. And it's kind of a backbone that lives underneath and all the time is up. So in practice, it means that we do health scoring. If one provider is sending an information, what does it mean that the other provider didn't desync? So Lava, what it's doing is doing a cross-validation among the different providers. It actually makes them compete for the quality of service. So the routing decisions are making every few seconds based on the live health. And providers are scored according to the latency, availability, uptime, and correctness of the data. So when I'm thinking about different ways to incentivize, this is what made us build Lava at the beginning. The providers has to stake. It's kind of the skin in the game. They say that we are accounted for the service we make. And this is how reliability is enforced here. Node runners take to participate, quality is measured every time, and rewards are paid every time according to this quality of service. Applications don't need to maintain their own logic. The network is doing that. And if I think about 2025, last year, we have two outcomes. One outcome is Lava grew by 5x. We started 2025 with 2 billion requests and ended that in 11 billion requests. But a single time, the network was not down. And this is by the design. More and more providers join dozens of networks, from near hyperliquid, Ethereum. We spoke about censorship resistance. Would love to expand that afterwards. But that's the routing layer effect that simply was not here before Lava started. And I want to show you something. We have now a new product that actually speaks for itself. Every network, every chain, every foundation has to introduce the RPC layer for their builders. And in big chains, there's sometimes the double-digit different providers that the builders has to choose. Whether sometimes it's Alchemy, it's QuickNode, the most reputable one, but sometimes the community node runners are doing better service. This is the new product that we call the Smart Router for Foundation. And it's going to be available in any chain out there in the next few weeks. We aggregate all the endpoints under one hood, under one endpoint. So builders don't need to think, who are we trusting? This question is no longer valid. And the same way as this year we've seen AWS, Cloudflare, GCP, all went down. I basically was in New York and I could not use my credit card in October. I guess some of you couldn't use the ChatGPT in November. All of that is because the internet is super centralized. But when we talk about Web3 or crypto, we talk about decentralizing the access. So the TCP/IP didn't remove failure. It made failure irrelevant for the application. That's what routing layers do. And when foundation adopting the routing, it stopped being optional, but it becomes infrastructure now. And that's what Lava is serving today, serving dozens of chains. And as I mentioned, in the next few weeks, we want to give this access to any chain out there. Literally, as I'm speaking, we're going to announce soon with near RPC a public unified endpoint for the entire chain. And it doesn't stop here. And I'm super excited to announce on a MIT collaboration. In the last few months, the same way that TCP/IP was formed in Stanford and with DARPA, we are working closely with MIT about the standardizing of the new way of routing layer in blockchain. Because when now agentic world is coming in, the always-on layer is not optional anymore. Especially for those agents, they need it constantly. So why does it matter now? And when we think about agents, I like to think that they are different than us in a way that they don't interact with the same UX. They don't need to read interfaces, and they don't make transactions based on single or one exchange. But at the end of the day, agents don't sleep, they don't take coffee breaks, and they're all the time coming in, sometimes in bursts. So now when this demand is growing, and there's going to be much more activity on-chain, systems that assume perfect providers won't survive that. Reliability is no longer nice to have. So what is the inevitable outcome? The internet did it with TCP/IP. Clouds did it with load balancer. What about crypto and Web3? The routing layer, reliability layer, is the infrastructure for all of this. And I would finish with something that I started with. Blockchains are decentralized. Reliability must be too. Thank you.